Hey everybody, how you doing? Everybody, how you doing? Hope you're well. And this is a late night news item I want to get out via live stream and video blog. And so, with that, I will read to you this press release. Family demands the San Francisco Police Department and medical examiner investigate the death of their son, Jaxon Sales. Over 41,000 people have signed a change.org petition demanding that the San Francisco Police Department and the San Francisco Office of the Chief Medical Examiner investigate the death of Jaxon Sales. On March 2nd, 2020, Angie and Jim Sales were informed that their 20-year-old son was found naked and dead in the apartment of a 41-year-old man in San Francisco. Upon arrival, after speaking only to the resident of the apartment, SFPD deemed the death an accidental overdose. Based on this sole testimony, police allegedly did not question the other guests in the apartment from the night before, nor any neighbors or other potential witnesses. The 41-year-old resident allegedly showered and cleaned the apartment before he called 911 and before San Francisco Police Department officers arrived. He was never named as a suspect or a person of interest. The medical examiner reported that there were toxic levels of gamma hydrobutyric acid GHB in Jackson's system. GHB is commonly known as the date rape drug. The family reported that the assistant medical examiner justified the lack of investigation by saying, quote, that the gay community uses GHB. Medical examiner reports also indicate that there were illegal drugs found in the closet, which may or may not have been taken as evidence. A family member was also told by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner that there was a non-lethal drug overdose in the same resident's apartment the prior week. Yet, they still didn't suspect any foul play. The death of Jaxon Sales is reminiscent of other situations where police did not properly investigate the deaths of gay men of color who overdosed in the home of an older white man. In 2021, Ed Buck, a wealthy white 67-year-old man who I might add is a noted Democratic Party donor, was convicted of 9 charges, including the distribution of methamphetamine that resulted in the deaths of Gamal Moore and Timothy Dean. Moore and Dean were 26 and 55 years old, respectively, and both identified as gay black men. Their deaths, which took place in West Hollywood, California, were also ruled as, quote, accidental overdoses. However, a public outcry and media attention led to a reopening of the investigation, eventually resulting in multiple charges against Buck, his arrest, and his conviction. The parents of Jaxon Sales are joined by Asian American and LGBTQ community leaders, as well as by elected officials and others like Zenny 62 Media here and other media people who demand justice. Dr. Kevin Nadal, a distinguished professor of John Jay College of Criminal Justice and the author of Queering Law and Order, LGBTQ Communities and the Criminal Justice System, shared, quote, what happened to Jaxon Sales demonstrates how the criminal justice system views LGBTQ people of color, black folks like myself, and especially LGBTQ people who are people of color and black. They view us all as essentially disposable. To not investigate a drug overdose based on only the testimony of a gay white man shows how little the SFPD and the medical examiner care about queer people of color. Such biases and disregard toward LGBTQ people of color and their families have been a common practice for police officers throughout the history of the United States. California Senator Scott Wiener has asked the San Francisco Police Department and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner to reopen the investigation. In an open letter to both entities, he writes, because no one who was present at the home of the evening before Jackson's death was interviewed, other than the owner of the property, it is unclear to me, says Senator Weiner, how San Francisco police could have reached any conclusions about this death in terms of whether or not a crime act occurred. Additionally, Mr. Sales' parents have stated their belief that another overdose took place at the same residence shortly before Jackson's death. If indeed there was a prior overdose at the same residence, I find it alarming, says Senator Weiner, that San Francisco Police Department decided not to take basic investigative steps to determine if the two incidents were at all related. Angie and Jim Sales created the change.org petition in late January of 2022, nearly 2 years after their son's death, because of the medical examiner's comment about the, quote, gay community, unquote, and GHB, as well as the police relying solely on the white resident's testimony. The family questions how much Jackson's sexual orientation and race played a part in SFPD and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner's refusal to reopen the investigation. In their petition, they write, the death of a gay Asian male deserves and should receive the same scrutiny as in any other sudden or suspected death. And I want to say something too. It shouldn't matter that Jaxon Sales is gay. I'm not gay. This is a crime that was not sufficiently investigated. And so a person who did the crime, it appears, is off free to do who knows what, perhaps leave the country if that person chooses to do so. Meanwhile, this pace of investigating this case maintains an excruciatingly slow rate. That's got to stop. But there also appears to be this rising series of incidents that involve San Francisco police either committing crimes against gay men in San Francisco, as is the case of the reported police brutality incident where a gay man was in the hospital, beaten to a pulp and into a coma, or this case, which involves Jaxon Sales, and all of a sudden, because it involves drugs and homosexual activity, the police give it a short shrift as opposed to treating it as a crime. There is really something wrong with that picture. So don't see this as that kind of problem. This is a person problem. This is a problem for all of us to be concerned about, because you don't want to have your police force out there selectively investigating which crime gets looked at more because, hey, maybe it's a white blonde girl or an interracial couple, and where the guy is black, and so the police don't like that it's interracial and the guy is black, and so they suddenly investigate that case really heavily. You don't want that, okay? You want every case to receive the same level of high scrutiny. That's the idea. So do your part. Hey, just advance this video blog. Let people hear the story, read about it, sign the petition, pass it on. Hey, establish a new petition, excuse me. Do everything you can to continue to get the word out. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. That ends this broadcast.